Welcome to the Bitcoin Zodiac, the podcast that explores the intersection of finance and astrology, where we use a combination of spirituality and logic to help us connect the dots in the markets as well as in life. Hosted by Corinne, Claire, and Alexandra, who come from a diverse background, bringing with them a wealth of knowledge and experience in the realms of astrology, cryptocurrency, spirituality, yoga philosophy, day trading, and of course, Bitcoin. In each episode, we explore a different aspect of the economics of the markets, from following Bitcoin to more complex topics like blockchain governance and decentralized finance. But we don't just stop there. We also examine and discuss the astrological implications of these topics, exploring the different zodiac signs, the houses, the moon phases, and how they might approach financial decision-making and investment strategies. Join us on this journey as we explore the intersection of these two worlds that are often thought to be at odds with one another, finance and astrology. Whether you're a seasoned crypto investor, a day trader, or just starting to dip your toes into the world of Bitcoin and blockchain, the Bitcoin Zodiac is a podcast for you. So sit back, relax, maybe take some notes, and come expand your consciousness with us through the world of the financial markets with an astrological lens.
Good morning.
Here we are. Hello.
How's everybody going?
We're all
talk at once now.
all chatting Gemini, even though we're already shifting out of Gemini, but there's still kind of the energies of Gemini in the air.
A lot of information, like everywhere.
Everywhere.
It really has been that like influx of information through Gemini season. It's been cool. I mean, I'm feeling good. I really love Gemini season actually, but we're sort of moving into that more emotional Capricorn season. So it's coming.
Yeah. Well, we technically still have Mercury in Gemini, and that is like the communication sign with the communication sign. And yeah, as we start to shift into Mercury in Cancer or Sun in Cancer and all these things, it's ready to, it's just like, I get like Evanescence and Taylor Swift vibes.
Oh, don't start with the Taylor Swift. I'm not allowed to listen to Taylor Swift anymore.
No, we're
No,
not.
we're not doing that anymore. Yeah.
Well,
now we're into R&B music for Cancer season, like 90s R&B. Maybe 2000 R&B. Yeah. I have a great DM me on Instagram, everybody. I'll give it to you.
you need like a little R. Kelly in there, a little, what was it? Ignition. Ignition.
Oh, yeah. We don't want to give people the wrong idea. No Ignition.
Look, for me, Ignition was still in Corinne being like a 9-year-old, 8-year-old brain of like, yeah, this song, hooray. We went
fresh out the kitchen. Yes.
Like cookies, fresh out the kitchen, right?
Fresh baked bread. Yes, something like that.
Wow.
Oh boy. Okay, we're going to blame that on
Bitcoin Zodiac.
Yeah. Welcome to the Bitcoin Zodiac for all of your 90s music inspiration and interpretations. I love it.
Throwbacks. Oh boy. Anyway,
here we are in Cancer season, reminiscing, I guess.
Exactly. Getting in all these. But before we get to that, we had some really, really cool things happen over the new moon in Gemini.
We had some wild. I mean, it was, if people who are listening didn't listen to our last episode, if you go back to our last episode, you'll really understand. And we really felt that, influx of Gemini and new moon in Gemini, Mercury in Gemini, that influx of information just coming out of so many different places and lots of different perspectives. And so it was really that moment as well. I mean, especially with the BlackRock news of them filing for an ETF a Bitcoin spot ETF. There were lots of differing perspectives. And again, I touched on it last episode, when that Gemini energy is really the ability to hold multiple perspectives at once. And so I think that was really the order of the day during that last new moon.
Yeah. I love that. So true. And, I remember us saying last podcast, we were like, this is looking really good for Bitcoin. Despite the news, because last time we were recording it, Binance was getting hit hard. Coinbase wanted to leave the US. And now it's like, oh, by the way, banks are flooding money into Bitcoin and everybody seems to want an ETF. Didn't know back then. And we spoke about the bullishness, of course, around the new moon, because that brings price of Bitcoin up. But we spoke specifically about the Saturn and Jupiter sextile, as well as a lot of other positive aspects that were happening around Uranus, as well as the natal Uranus and Saturn of Bitcoin. And we were constantly like, yeah, superhero vibes for like Bitcoin. It's about to take off and break that 30K. And it did, which was amazing to see. So thank you once again, astrology.
No, thanks for giving us that heads up. And Bitcoin is just loving itself, feeling itself right now. I'd really love to see it sort of close a weekly candle above 32 and sort of settle around that area. That would be really comfortable for me, but I don't, obviously astrology doesn't tell us the number, but just looking from a technical chart point of view, that would be really bullish for me. But it's so interesting because there's so much going on. It's very dark in the sort of like macro world and the TradFi world, and yield curves are inverting further, and all of these different things that are happening. But Bitcoin is just like, bye, Felicia, I'm doing my thing. And powering on. And the atmosphere around Bitcoin also really shifted. I guess it did start to shift, with the SEC. Although they were attacking crypto, it was, notable that, Bitcoin wasn't on that list. Ethereum wasn't on that list. And then sort of things started to really shift, and all of those sort of institutions and the heads of those institutions that have always called Bitcoin a scam, Bitcoin a tulip bubble, and all of those things started to shift and move towards Bitcoin, which was really interesting.
Accumulating Bitcoin. And that's why we have to like always just remember that the news, I'm just going to say it, the news is manipulated. They want to push out a certain type of narrative, a certain type of idea, and you never know what's actually happening in the background. Or you can use things such as on-chain analysis to see where is the money actually flowing. And you can also use your intuition to really understand, or what's the word I'm looking for, kind of like choose where is the truth and what is maybe being hidden or covered, or distraction has been a word that keeps kind of coming back to me lately as well. And before I forget, I do want to say, you just said like about Bitcoin being a rebel, and that is so this like Mars square Uranus that is coming into play literally today as we're recording this, the 26th of June. It's literally like rebellion energy. It's so cool. I love it. Go Bitcoin.
It really feels like that. And it's so interesting as well, that kind of Gemini Mercury communication as well, in terms of how that kind of news was received as well, that BlackRock have applied for a BTC spot ETF. So many acronyms, it's too much. But there were some people who were really freaked out by this and sort of were saying they're going to control the network, and then there were other people who were just like, this is the most amazing news, Bitcoin to the moon. Do you know what I mean? And there's always some middle ground to be found in both. Like, do I love that, BlackRock are going to own a substantial amount of the Bitcoin supply? Not really, but it is what it is. Like, I can't do anything about it. So you might as well just prepare for what is, rather than fighting against, what you want and what you don't want. And they may be able to have a little bit more control over the price, but at the end of the day, they can't control the decentralized networks. I think it's highly unlikely that they can get control of 51% of the mining capabilities. I mean, I could be wrong, but again, I think it's highly unlikely.
Yeah, I fully agree. Thank God for proof of work. And, that's one of the biggest debates, even about like Ethereum shifting from proof of work to proof of stake, that I guess it kind of increased its chances of potentially ever becoming centralized. There are people that already claim Ethereum to be centralized, but it's really like the proof of work that is keeping Bitcoin decentralized, even as these bigger entities come in and start to work their way in getting bigger portions of Bitcoin. But I do have like this, I still, and I'm just going to open it up to you ladies about what you think about this. I believe that Bitcoin is such a reflection of human consciousness, and it like has this whole other realm away from just, okay, how much of it is available? What is Bitcoin's price in relationship to the US dollar? And I feel like because of this energy that it has, that it will continue to flow in one way, shape, or form to the people that have good intentions around Bitcoin. And this, for me, and maybe this is not forever, but it is currently for now, this for me was confirmed when also over this weekend with the new moon, we saw the Schumann resonance shift. You ladies saw that, right?
Yeah.
It had
right?
a DNA dance party.
Literally. And I love that because we just saw, so for those that are listening, the Schumann resonance is long story short, or in simple words, it's the frequency of the earth. And we saw overnight, as there was the new moon overnight, we saw it shift and get to one of the highest frequencies that it's ever had. And for me, that was like, wow, like human consciousness is shifting regardless of all this negative news and this war, not just physical war, but psychological war that we're going through. Humans are elevating. We are going through this great awakening. And I just felt so much love. And then I go on the charts and I'm like, Bitcoin's taking off. This is a reflection of human consciousness. So my little rant.
Yeah.
How do you ladies feel about it?
Well, for those who haven't seen the images or the memes, like if you just want to picture this really quickly, like picture like a regular candle chart or like an EKG chart, you know what I mean? It's just like lines, that's like the Schumann resonance, essentially, putting in layman's terms. And then during this moon, it literally looked like DNA. Oh, wow. I don't know. I just heard that a firework just went off. That's crazy. It looks like DNA, like the pattern, the recorded pattern of it completely changed, like not even a little bit, like totally different. And it was a powerful day. Now you said something interesting, Corinne. You were like, Bitcoin, the price and how much of it there is, like it's more than that, like that view, those concerns. I mean, yeah, they're real concerns, but that's still very old monetary, like old school money systems. That's old views. That's like very like, I don't know, Pluto and Capricorn views. So like as Bitcoin grows, as this evolves,
very Pluto and Capricorn.
Yeah, so like as this evolves, it's going to expand people's consciousness. I mean, Bitcoin is said to be the eighth wonder of the world. For whether it is or isn't, it's changing the way we view a monetary system, and it's making it more spiritual because it is not physical. It is ethereal. It is a consciousness. and I'm still learning to understand it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's the thing, is that I think I've said this in previous podcasts, is that, Bitcoin it's not really even about now. Like, I don't think that anyone truly understands what Bitcoin is. And I do agree that it is a consciousness in itself. And I think, we build all of these different narratives around Bitcoin because we're attempting to understand Bitcoin and make sense of Bitcoin. But I think, it's really created for the Aquarian age. It's created for a different time, and we haven't yet got the context for that yet. So
Yeah.
I think that it's going to continue to evolve, and everything in its chart also speaks to that as well. And yeah, it's kind of really fascinating to watch. And I sort of think back to a time, like I remember when someone first told me about Bitcoin. It was really a long time ago, and they were trying to explain. I mean, we were at a party and they were trying to explain it to me, and they were trying to explain mining, and I was just like, what are these guys talking about? They've lost it. Mining money on the internet, like, this is ridiculous, but I realize now that, Saifedean Ammous only released his book, The Bitcoin Standard, I think in 2018. So that then again gave us another sort of framework to be able to understand Bitcoin. Like, previously, when those guys were telling me about it, they didn't have that framework with which to explain Bitcoin. So they kind of just knew, hey, this is something, and we're going to try and explain it in our best way. But then, as we've moved on, we've developed these narratives. Now, Bitcoin hasn't changed. Bitcoin just does what Bitcoin does. It is what Bitcoin is. So it's actually us that is catching up our understanding of Bitcoin. And I think that that's only going to continue to evolve.
I love that. Yep. Great viewpoints. So it's exciting. We're shifting. Like we said, 2023 is just the year of transformation.
Transformation and accumulation. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we do have some really more interesting astrology coming up. So as we release this episode, happy full moon, everybody. It is a full moon in Capricorn. And it's so interesting to see that we're really shifting back into, with Pluto going back into Capricorn, the full moon being in Capricorn, Bitcoin's natal sun being Capricorn. This, of course, already gives me quite positive vibes for Bitcoin overall, even though a full moon is normally when we do have local bottoms. So I do expect, as we're listening, or as our listeners, you guys are listening to this podcast, Bitcoin has probably reached a local bottom. We've had a little bit of a pullback, probably a healthy pullback, unless something crazy happens, because there's a lot of war vibes happening in the air right now too. But I'd love to focus on positivity, and we're probably reaching a local bottom, and Bitcoin overall is going to start heading up towards the new moon in Cancer, which is really the next moon that we are looking towards.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Do either of you ladies already maybe have something about Cancer in general and the new moon coming up?
Well, we have this full moon as well, which I think is something that sort of we should also have a look at, because we have this, we have the sun in Cancer, and then we have the full moon in Capricorn. So the Capricorn energy is very, focused, ambitious, disciplined. So it's that sign, it's that grounded earth element. So it's such a contrast between our last period of Gemini, air sign, and Sagittarius, fire sign, right? So now we have the water and the earth signs. And so, yeah, Capricorn is very much associated with practicality, ambition, responsibility, and really stability. And so, but then you have this Cancer energy coming in as well, which brings in the emotional intentions as well to the surface and sort of amplifying that impact. So, yeah, it really, I think the full moon in Capricorn really highlights the need for like a structured, disciplined approach, which is just such a contrast to this constant flow of like ever-changing information that we've had coming out of that Gemini season. So, yeah, so it's maybe like a time that things are a little bit more stable, a little less volatile around this full moon. But just sort of watch that, you know, while Capricorn is a very practical sign, the opposition with Cancer then reminds us that it's like, you know, our emotional connection. So I think it's sort of really interesting to have a look at both of those qualities. So it's really about cultivating that healthy balance between, you know, our sensible side of things and also our emotional side of things as well.
Yeah, I like that. I like the stability with the Capricorn, because I do feel like we're probably going to be seeing some nice support just being created around this time, off of which Bitcoin can continue to grow.
Yeah,
I really feel that.
Yeah, and I mean, I would really like to see that at like, you know, 32-ish. I'd really like to see that.
Yeah, that's interesting, because maybe because I'm really looking at, and you know, for those listening, we would have already gone past this, but I'm really looking at that Mars square Uranus that's occurring today. I'm really interested to see, and it's also Mars opposition the natal Neptune of Bitcoin. So I'm really interested to see how it reacts to that. At the moment, it is giving me bearish vibes, nothing too crazy. And I do think that 32 that you're talking about, we're going to see in the next
come more that, yeah, from that new moon. I think I'm talking after the full moon into that new moon. I'm hoping that we're going to find some stability around that 32 mark.
Totally see that.
Yeah.
And
go on.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Alex. Please go ahead, Alex.
I'm not sure like what will transpire between the actual full moon and this moment where we're recording, but I'm hoping that people will be able to do a lot of releasing of all of this information overload from Gemini and being able to find some new stability and structure in their own lives and whatever that looks like for them in stability, structure, supporting themselves and just being able to release. I know that's what I will be doing. I have a lot in Capricorn, and it's like releasing these old limiting beliefs, or just old beliefs in general about like how money works, how the world works, how business works, how money can come to you. It's very interesting how that's happening on like a micro level for me, but on a macro level, it's like we were just talking about how it's all about Bitcoin is just going to cause consciousness to evolve in terms of money, and also just how it's going to help society work, which is unbeknownst to us at this moment.
That it's really interesting that you say that, because Capricorn is ruled by, you know, we can look at Saturn as well, and Saturn's in Pisces, and so you know, Saturn again is like structure, stability, discipline, long-term play. It's the lessons. And it kind of rules over areas such as career, ambition, financial stability. And Pisces, you know, is really like the realms of dreams, imagination, illusion. And so it sort of brings that. I think this is a time also when our illusions are going to be challenged. You know, our illusions are sort of going to be the illusions that we've held also for a long time, these belief systems that we've held for a long time, they're going to be challenged. And we can obviously channel that energy into a really healthy way. There are belief systems that we hold, you know, definitely around security, around money, and things like that that probably need to go, that are just illusions. They're not true. They're just you know, limiting belief systems. But also, I think as we have these big transitions for the world, it's you know, the illusions of what we've always held to be true. I'm just coming to mind right now as we speak is the American dream, right? It's called the American dream. It's not called the American reality. And I feel that like that is a very, you know, end of the Piscean age idea. You know, that's been an idea for what, the last, you know, 100 years, I guess. And something that's really been elevated, but I think that is almost being challenged at this point in time, and those sort of the veil of these kind of illusions are being revealed in a lot of different ways.
Wow.
Yeah. Thank you both so much for saying this, because I think that this is such a big reflection point for everybody to already start to, I guess, prepare around the full moon, because if there was a full moon that is going to be perfect about releasing old concepts and conditioning and programming around money, this one is going to be it. And intuitively, I think I lately have been doing this training on my lessons with my students, where I have been really getting people to question, what are your beliefs around money? And if it's okay with you two, I'm going to like 2 minutes break this down for people. So then I guess it's going to be kind of like a moon ceremony that everybody can do for themselves. Yeah. So like, you know, and we can do this with any sort of belief and programming and conditioning that we have. But when we really like just stop and analyze and look at, what is it that you believe around money? And I break it down in 4 pieces. Start with the awareness, which is become aware of what your thoughts are around money, what you believe, if it is evil, if it is good, if it brings abundance, if it brings scarcity, or what it is that you believe. Start with the awareness. Then number 2 is understanding. And once you've figured out that awareness of what your beliefs are, bring it to and understand, where did these beliefs get created? Who brought these beliefs into my mind? Which scenarios in my life? And typically it starts from childhood. I believe for women, it's the first 13 years. For men, it's the first 15 years, but it's really the first 7 years of our lives that already go and create. We start to see, you know, as kids, we're so much monkey see, monkey do. So already start to then understand, wow, why do I believe that money is evil? Why do I believe that money brings abundance? Where did I see that or feel that or hear that? So that's number 2, understanding. Number 3 is then the disassociation. And this comes with a lot of journaling and releasing and letting go and disassociating those beliefs to your being. Understand that those were programs and conditions that were just put inside of you as you were a child. It's not actually part of your being, of your identity, of who it is that you want to be, because thanks to free will, we can choose to be whoever it is that we want to be. And so that is the part of then disassociation, writing that out and journaling, and just realizing that that is not who you are. It's maybe just a part of what you have been programmed. And then number 4, and that's the last part, is now we can start with the reconditioning, the reprogramming. And that comes even through things like we always hear, oh, you know, make sure you do your affirmations every day. But sometimes they feel so fake because we haven't done the first 3 steps. And when we first do the first 3 steps, then we can release and let go, disassociate. And now we can reprogram and say, hey, I release that old belief. And now I do believe that money is abundant. I do believe that I can attract wealth into my life. I do believe that I am worth, that I am worthy of all of the abundance, et cetera, et cetera. And you can go and recreate that. So, I hope that helps and brings somebody some fun full moon rituals, because we've been doing a lot of that within our teams, and it's just been so beautiful to see the breakthroughs. So this is just the perfect full moon for it.
You guys, Corinne, while you were saying that, I got these crazy downloads based off the illusion of the history of the American dream. And as I was typing stuff, you and I were typing the same, you were speaking, and I was typing the same words. Can I read this to you guys?
Please.
Yeah, go ahead.
And then go off. Illusion, Piscean, the history of American dream. When did that develop? Was it after the Great Depression, plagues, migration to America? Who created this belief, the idea, the narrative of the American dream? Chasing the dollar, gold standard, no more gold standard. Media, Hollywood, dollar slave system, climb up the ladder, inflate living, comparison, robbing of joy, greed to the self, disregarding authenticity, disregarding spirit. So I think we're seeing that collapse.
Yeah. And this belief system, one of the best people I think that does this is a lady called Lacey Phillips, and she has a brand called To Be Magnetic, and that's really her process. And there's actually a lot of neuroscience that backs that up, because the age of 0 to 7, our brain is actually in theta state. And so that's when, we are being programmed. So there is also, in terms of neuroplasticity, we can, as an adult, we're not in theta state all the time, but as a child, you are. So you are literally being programmed what your view of the world is, what your view of people, how you interact with the world. That's what's being built, those belief systems at that time. So you can go back and reprogram those. And I think it's also really useful when you identify a limiting belief of yours to go back and say, where did I pick that up? And whose voice am I hearing? And is that voice still valid? Is it a voice of society? Is it a voice, at school, familial programming? We get a lot of those sorts of things, and just really, use this full moon energy to release those things that no longer serve you, and realign and reprogram, because you can create new neural pathways as an adult and really change your belief systems. And that's backed by neuroscience. It's not just, some woo-woo new age thing. It's, there is scientific backing behind that as well. So it's really useful to do that. And I think that this is really a time when illusions we've held collectively, illusions we've held personally, are really, we're able to see them for what they are, that they are illusions. They're not something that's solid, something that's fact necessarily. And really it's what we've assigned the label of fact to them. And that's actually not a static thing.
Just because it's the way something's always been, or it's just what or how it is, it doesn't mean that it's fact. And if that's a scenario for anyone listening, I just am this way, or it is this way because that's what my family believed. Oh, it's just this way because that's what society says or the media says. Go find an alternative answer just to back test your belief. You know what I'm saying? If you really believe in something wholeheartedly, go look for reasons why not? You know what I'm saying? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Reinforce those belief systems that you want. And I think as well, to bring Bitcoin into this is that, there's so many, again, Alex, exactly what you said. Just because something has been true for a really long time doesn't mean that it's always going to be true. And I think that, when we think of Bitcoin, I think the first thing that people always say when you mention Bitcoin is oh, well, the government will never approve that. oh, well, this is, this is how this is. And it's like, yeah, okay, that may be true now. It may have been true for the last 100 years, but just because it's been true for a really long time doesn't mean that that's always going to be true. And we are shifting and evolving at a really rapid rate. Our financial system, a lot of different things are changing around us, and we need to be open to that change, but also prepare our own nervous system, prepare our own mind to be able to hold new things and have the capacity to hold new things. And I think it's really fun and exciting. I love doing this kind of work.
Me too.
Love.
Me too.
Yeah.
I love it. That was so beautiful. Wow. I can't wait for it to be the full moon, because remember, guys, we're not recording this on the full moon. And I'm like, wow, I really want it to be the full moon. I'm ready to like do the work. So beautiful.
You can also do it at any time, but then you can have that real release on the full moon. I think it's also, I loved, Corinne, that you said how, sometimes with affirmations, they kind of feel fake and uncomfortable, because I think there's been such a focus on like think positive, stay in the vortex, all of those kind of things, especially in like wellness world. But I think that you do also have to do the kind of dark world of like, well, how come my natural instinct is not positive in this area? Like, where did that come from? Where is that blocking me from just flowing in that positivity rather than a forced positivity, if that makes sense? So, I think it's cool to even just do that work at any time that you notice something like that come up, but then you can really use that full moon energy to just to release it all.
Yeah. Well, that's how we get through it. It's like if you only focus or you try and bypass it with positivity, you're doing your soul a disservice from evolving, and you're going to stay stuck. So it's like, what is the quote? I said this in one of my yoga therapy groups this week. It's like from the wound is where the light enters. From where we are wounded on a physical, mental, emotional, energetic, or spiritual level, like we actually have to go and be with that and sit with that and understand that and question it and witness what comes up, because there's transformation through that like cesspool of darkness that we want to avoid. And it's like the Scorpio placements in my chart like really do like that type of work and stuff, but it's like it's not always all dark. Like dark only exists because light exists, and vice versa, so that's how we get through to the other side, is just we sit with it. That part of ourself just wants to be integrated, understood, and loved ultimately.
Absolutely. And I think I think that is the human journey, to be honest, is that like when we incarnated, when we, came into this world, into this body, we were this pure being. And as we've moved through the world, we pick up different things, as I said, from society, from family, from schooling, from work, from, all different sorts of things, pop culture, all of those different things. And I think that is our soul journey, is to just gradually peel back those layers of programming and, realign to our authentic being that we came into the earth as. And I think that's a life journey, a lifelong journey.
Yeah. I wonder what we were doing in past lives together, or when we were like up in the ethers and we're like, we're going to create this podcast.
Oh, that's so sweet. We're so cute. Love it. With all this like kind of like self-reflection talk, I always like to kind of look at retrogrades as moments of like, it's kind of shaking things up and making you really relook at certain areas. And I'm noticing that we have a lot of planets in retrograde. We have Saturn in retrograde, Pluto in retrograde, and Neptune in retrograde. So for that, Neptune is going retrograde on the 30th of June. And that's all the way through. We have it for like 5 months until like December 6th.
Oh, my birthday.
Oh, yay. Well, everything's going to realign again for your birthday.
Love it.
Eclipses in October will be over. And Neptune is like, just bringing it back to like that planet of illusion, because Neptune's rules Pisces and it's in Pisces. So I was just looking as well for Bitcoin specifically. It's going to be in the 9th house, and the 9th house is in relation to foreign affairs. So I wonder if this is like going to, are more countries going to be like, oh yeah, like we need to get onto the bandwagon of Bitcoin because we're looking back and realizing like, damn, we should have done this earlier.
Probably. Like, why would you not at this point?
I mean, that's obvious to us, right? We're like, duh.
Well, there was a headline that I haven't looked deeply into it, but it just came to mind when you said that on the agenda for the BRICS Nation Summit is the potential of, they are looking at possibly using Bitcoin for international settlements. So as I said, I haven't researched how serious that is, or whether it's just, somewhat that's an agenda that someone is wanting to bring to the table. But I just thought that was quite interesting as well, because as we've talked previously about the reserve currency, is that it's always about all of this kind of de-dollarization and people saying, well, we're going to trade in our local currency. It's actually very difficult for smaller countries to be able to be involved in that. That's always been the USP of the dollar, is that you can hold reserves in one currency and trade with, I think, at least 200 other countries. Whereas if it starts to become fragmented and people, countries are trading in local currency, these smaller countries need to hold reserves in multiple currencies, and that isn't ideal for trade for them. So looking at something that's like a common trading currency, whether the BRICS, there's obviously been talk that the BRICS will create their own trading currency, possibly backed by gold, and to use in their trading block. I'm not saying that that's going to be the reserve currency of the world. It may just be used within their trading block, or something like Bitcoin. So I just thought that was an interesting headline that I noticed the other day.
That's super interesting. Wow. I just went to have a really quick look at the BRICS nation. So I believe the first summit of BRICS nation was on the 16th of June, 2009. So that means that BRICS sun is in Gemini, and Gemini is actually an air sign, and air signs are going to be the most challenged during this Neptune retrograde.
Oh, goodness.
I don't know if anything is going to be linked to that with, all of this. But yeah, and good news if you're a water sign, because this is going to be amazing for you. So go our Cancer, Scorpios, and Pisces. You're going to love the Neptune retrograde. Make the most of it. But it's a challenging aspect for BRICS. Now, that could also be that, they're going to have some challenging decisions to make around this. And, then the future isn't written in stone, right? Like, if they make the right decisions, then it could work out well for them, or might fire back later on, next time Neptune goes into retrograde. Or
and it's probably a mix of both, generally.
Right. Yeah. Cool. Fun times.
Yeah. We've got some interesting things coming up between the Capricorn full moon and the Cancer new moon. We also have, July 10th, we have Mars moving into Virgo. So at the time of the full moon, we have both Mars and Venus still in Leo, which we discussed in our last episode. But Mars moving into Virgo, that transit lasts up until the 27th of August. And it's one that sort of brings together the ambitious power of Mars and the practical can-do energy of Virgo. So it's a really kind of like make shit happen energy. So it's a great time to focus on goals and take, tangible, purposeful steps. And, I think we can see that also in a couple of different aspects happening. In terms of Bitcoin. And I think it's just going to be this, slow and steady, confident moves. It's not necessarily, we'll talk about something else later that might be a bit more impulsive. But I think this kind of conscientious, purposeful moves forward is really good, because this Mars energy sort of represents that energy, drive, and assertiveness, while Virgo is like practical, attention to detail, and efficient. So it's like attention to detail, methodical approach, work ethic and efficiency, and really discerning decision making. So that's quite interesting.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. Like, Mars Virgo is get shit done. Like, just get it done, go, won't stop until it does what it needs to do. I love it.
And like literally then the following day as well, we have Mercury moving into Leo. And, so that one lasts until the 28th of July. And that'll bring confidence, presence, and urge to express, fully and openly, asking for what you want and deserve, and putting out new ideas and pitches. So it's a really good time to work, with that expansion. And, as we said before, Mercury is communication, intellect, and flow of information. And so when it moves into Leo, it brings that dynamic, expressive energy. And it's, Leo's associated with creativity, confidence, and self-expression. So when Mercury's in Leo, these qualities kind of combine and just create this period where you approach things with enthusiasm, charisma, and just flair for self-promotion. So, I thought those were two really interesting, positive moves.
Yeah, they're really good energies, even for Bitcoin at this point in time.
Very much. And then, of course, as we've spoken about in previous episodes, we've got that North Node moving into Aries on the 17th of July. So we've talked about that previously, Corinne, in terms of the 18.6-year cycle. And that brings that kind of like more impulsive aspect to the forefront.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting for those that haven't listened to it yet. Go and listen to the fourth, I believe, podcast, where it's where we talk about the 18.6-year cycle. And it's cool that it's happening the same day as the new moon. So we have both the new moon in Cancer as well as the North Node finally shifting out of Taurus, which has really slowed down the economy, and shifting into Aries, which is a lot of ignition. Now,
Ignition again.
What's that?
I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I said ignition again.
Oh, the 90s song.
Oh my God, I hadn't even thought of that. Okay, maybe we're gonna have to like close out the session with playing Ignition or something. I don't know.
Please go on. I did not mean to.
No, you're good. I love it. Instead of going out with a meditation, we're gonna go out with a little bit of R&B. But anyway. So it is an ignite energy. It is a very fire energy. We have to think about that. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. So it literally takes things off. It's the start. It's the new. It's the fresh. But it's also a lot about me is the Aries energy. And it's also the sign of war. So that gives us a lot of the energy that's going to happen. A lot of like innovations as well typically happen during, any Aries energy. And I think it's also interesting to point out that then the South Node, because even here, duality, where it is that we have the North Node, then where is the South Node? So the opposite of Aries, which is me, we have Libra, which is about you. So the South Node, and if we look at it from a personal astrology perspective, the South Node is like the shadow work. And it's things that we have, it's kind of like past lives, if that's what you believe in. And it's like what you maybe have learned and also need to continue doing the work. Whereas the North Node is like the new direction where it is that we are headed together. And I think especially as like a society, it's like, okay, where are the lessons that we need to head towards? But bringing it back to what that's going to mean for Bitcoin, I think this is really the time where it's going to start to take off. We're really going to see price continue upwards, unless there is a big black swan event, which could happen. And if it is going to happen, right now, I do feel it's going to be around that October eclipse period, but let's see what happens. And so I think it'll also be interesting to see, because I don't know why this just like came to me. I'm like, Libra is peace, but then like Aries is war. So I don't know if it's like, I think that'll just be interesting to see in general what happens overall. What comes to me is like, okay, hello, wake up everybody. Decentralization is the solution, and self like responsibility of our money and our finances. And maybe that's what this lesson is going to be for society in general. But again, in terms of Bitcoin and the economy in general, it's very positive, except for friendly reminder, which we did speak about in that 4th episode. This is going to be where a lot of fake money flows in. And we look at Aries around money. Aries does tend to have some greed, let's say, around money. So it's like kind of that, like, let me make it in any way that I can, right? That's the energy around that. And so that also aligns perfectly with okay, we have really these 2 years up until potentially 2025, 2026, 2027, where there's going to be a big influx of money. And the last thing I'll add there is that the timing is perfect for the release of Fed Now in July.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you were saying like taking responsibility for money, I think you mentioned that sometime in the past 5 minutes, like people waking up to that. It's like also like in the dual nature of the universe, the other side of that is like kind of what I was texting you about before, is like we're seeing that's the other side of it. The people, like the majority of society, at least not majority, split, have been just so harmed or hurt by like the chemical revolution on so many levels that they don't want to think for themselves, right? Like they don't know how to think for themselves. And I don't want to go too far into that. But like big ag, big pharma, like big air at this point with the whatever stuff sprayed in the air. How you could go do your own research on that, but it's like it's introducing the AI and the Fed Now, and it's like people almost not caring about their money anymore. And so this is, do you get what how I'm trying to connect the dots here? I might be sounding a little tired, but does this make sense?
Yeah, well, I think the North Node sort of represents the path of growth and development, whereas the South Node is like past experience and patterns that also need to be released. So Aries is the Aries North Node is like urging people to embrace their independence, take initiative, and lean into and cultivate assertiveness. Yes. Whereas the South Node in Libra is sort of like showing us this need to release like an over-reliance on partnerships or the collective, external validation, and and things like that in decision making. And I do think we are going through this period where it's, I came to this sort of realization that like, wow, a lot of the collective really wants someone to tell them what to do and what to think.
Yes.
And so this South Node in Libra is really letting us know, hey, you need to let that go and move into this North Node independent initiative of Aries. But there's also this balance with the North Node and Aries and the South Node and Libra, there's really an emphasis on finding balance between individuality and partnerships, assertiveness and diplomacy, self-interest and collaboration. And you Corinne, you mentioned war as well. I think we're going to see that on a sort of nation state level as well, is finding this balance between individuality and independence, and partnerships in the collective, assertiveness versus diplomacy, self-interest versus collaboration. I think we'll see that play out a lot sort of at a nation state level as well as within our own lives, of course.
Yeah, I love that. That was beautifully put together.
Yes.
Yeah, really interesting times ahead. I'm just like, I can't wait for the future, but I'm trying to enjoy the present too. I love seeing
how we create the future. The present is what creates the future.
Yes. Thoughts, feelings, emotions, and decisions of today create the future.
Yeah. And it is sort of like in aligning that, like, holding that vision for the future that you want to see in the future, and making sure that our present day actions align with that future. Yeah.
And looking, I think this is the last kind of thing to touch on. Then let me know if we've missed anything else. The new moon in Cancer, specifically for Bitcoin. I was just looking at the natal chart and some of the transits rather that are happening on that 17th of July, specifically for Bitcoin. It's kind of like, I hate to circle back, but actually good to circle back, that it really brings it back to like, it's this whole like, don't get too carried away with your imagination. It's a time to test your connection with reality. And this is with Uranus actually going square the natal Neptune of Bitcoin. We also have some interesting things with, speaking of North Node, Jupiter is going square the natal node, or the natal North Node of Bitcoin. So here it's really around, more tests of the values, the morals, and the ideas. Watch out for a tendency to jump to decisions before you've gathered the finer points and details. And again, then bringing it back to like Bitcoin really is a reflection of human consciousness. It kind of like comes back to us, like, what is it that we're going to choose? And there's a lot of interesting astrology, but maybe just to give one more key thing, is that then let's look at Jupiter, because Jupiter obviously is a key planet of finances and abundance, specifically for Bitcoin. We have Pluto, which is conjunct the natal Jupiter. So this is a really positive thing where it's like you can achieve everything that you want, but just be careful to not achieve that success at the expense of others. Otherwise, will ultimately fail. And also the Neptune is trine the natal Jupiter as well. So we have Pluto conjunct the natal Jupiter, and also Neptune trine natal Jupiter. And here again, Neptune, bringing it back to, it's just a really great time to expand your views on spirituality and faith. So a lot of reoccurring themes. And I think that, again, it's not really Bitcoin under the test. It's we're being put to the test around what Bitcoin is, or what we believe Bitcoin to be.
I think Bitcoin is one of those interesting things that sort of holds a mirror in a way, because it's sort of, Bitcoin as a monetary system, this is why it's just a better monetary system than we have. Like, that's just a fact. And obviously it requires adoption and other people to believe in that too. So I'm not saying it's a done deal, but the sort of fundamentals and the technology of Bitcoin is just better than our existing system and what we have. but it does sort of mirror back to us our own beliefs of aligning to truth, because Bitcoin is basically verifiable truth when it comes to money. And I think that tends to bring out in people, individuals, institutions, and things like that, maybe governments or power structures that don't really want to align to verifiable truth. That doesn't align with their interests. So I think that's sort of an interesting reflection of that as well.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
And I think just what came to mind when you were saying that was just, we've obviously had a lot of this news with BlackRock launching their ETF or wanting to launch their ETF. And, that's okay. It's an avenue for institutions to be able to invest in Bitcoin. But it also does sort of miss the point of holding Bitcoin, and back to that sort of self-custody aspect as well. So for an individual, like, yes, okay, BlackRock has this ETF instead, there will be a lot of people that are just like, well, why would I bother buying Bitcoin? I can just, go through my broker and they can do it for me. It's again that personal responsibility of know that there is a difference to buying Bitcoin through an ETF. You're only really capturing that, move in US dollar value. Whereas, I personally think that what the real value of Bitcoin is that you can self-custody it yourself. So I think there will be a lot of people that lose sight of that sacrifice that element of sovereignty that Bitcoin gives to be able to, for the sake of convenience. And it's like, oh, well, I can just get my broker to do that now.
No, that's that old system. Like that's that old view of just like not being in charge of your finances, but not wanting, that's the Pluto and Capricorn. And I already know people who are already holding that view of a client of mine. And I explained it to him over and over again. You want to be able to hold your own Bitcoin. That's the whole point. Oh, my grayscale ETF is going to do me so well. Okay. I hope it does.
Yeah, because still looking through the lens of like pricing everything in US dollars.
Yes, yeah, that exactly.
Whereas Bitcoin really, that's, wow, that is the illusion. The illusion is that we are still comparing Bitcoin to what it is worth in US dollars, but one Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin, one Satoshi equals one Satoshi, period. That is it. And I feel like saying that's the trap. Like that is the trap, that we continue to compare it to fiat. Fiat it's already proven to be a failing system. We've got to transform. We've got to shift. And again, free will. But what a more perfect time than the full moon in Capricorn and this last Pluto in Capricorn period to just really dive into this information, really learn and understand real ownership, sovereignty, but really just being in full custody of what is your energy. Your finances are your energy, and where it is that you are storing that and who's actually in ownership of it. I encourage you to really go and evaluate all of what it is that you believe are your assets and what actually are your assets that no one can take away from you. And just going to throw that out there, seeing as Mars is still in Leo, and this is a big thing for real estate. Do you actually own your real estate? Food for thought for everybody there as well. What do you actually own? Because, we all know.
Stop paying your property taxes and you will soon find out who really owns your real estate.
Amen. Thank you. All I'm going to just to leave off there is There is, and this is not us making this up, it is no conspiracy. Go and have a look at the World Economic Forum by 2030. I think they even shifted it earlier now. You will own nothing and you will be happy. Will you be happy? What are your beliefs around this? Again, free will. But I think Bitcoin really has come in to awaken us to this has been the illusion that you actually own things. But do you really?
Yeah, I think there's another illusion I just want to bring to the fore as we kind of close on this as well. I just think it's the perfect time since you mentioned it, because Bitcoin is a fixed asset. And I think that we're really, I came to the conclusion that I was missing the point if I'm only viewing Bitcoin through its value in US dollar terms, and I understand why we do that. Our entire world is denominated in US dollars, basically. But it's not really a great measure because it's not a fixed supply asset itself. It's not a fixed asset itself. And the reality is that one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin. And actually, everything is depreciating against Bitcoin, especially as nearly every fiat currency in the world is being debased. And I was trying to explain this to somebody the other day, but when you look at different things, everybody's heard of the Bitcoin pizza was the first transaction ever to be conducted with Bitcoin. And people sort of laugh and go, oh my God, that guy must really regret it. He spent 10,000 Bitcoin on 2 pizzas. And he doesn't regret it because it's the first ever transaction using Bitcoin. And I'm sure he didn't spend his last 10,000 Bitcoin on 2 pizzas. So he's probably doing fine. But really, the real loser in that story to me is actually Domino's. If you think about it, in less than a decade, Domino's product, I think it was a Domino's pizza that he bought 2 Domino's pizzas. Now you can buy 2 Domino's pizzas with less than 10,000 Satoshis. So their product has depreciated against Bitcoin by 100,000x in less than a decade. So when you apply that to everything, so it's not necessarily oh, wow, Bitcoin's going up. It's no, actually, currencies are being debased and everything is depreciating against Bitcoin.
Love that. So true. Such a different perspective, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's the illusion of the current system, right? Because we can, we value things in what we can buy with them. In terms of money, it's when we think about when people want more US dollars, it's because they want to buy more things that are priced in US dollars. But a lot of these assets that look like they've gone up. I watched that thing with Raoul Paul. I've watched a couple of things, and he's talking about his everything code thesis. And he's saying, it is a bit of an optical illusion. Again, there's that word again, illusion, that asset prices in terms of housing, the S&P have all increased exponentially. But that's only when you're denominating it in dollars. If you look at it against the Fed balance sheet, everything's actually stayed flat. So those fixed assets like real estate and things like that have done a good job of protecting you from debasement, but they haven't actually really increased your wealth. So that's also just an interesting way to view things. It's helpful in these times to, again, what are the illusions that I'm buying into, and looking at things from a different perspective.
All I can say to that is happy journaling, everybody.
Yeah.
Happy journaling. Happy full moon. Happy Cancer season.
And one of the things as well, being in Cancer season, I think it's the perfect time that we sort of talked about this work of looking at our limiting beliefs, because our emotions are also a really important part of that, of not denying the emotions that come up around that. Sometimes when we're looking and analyzing illusions that we've, believed for our whole lives or something like that, it can make us feel really angry. It can make us feel really sad, defeated. And it's during this Cancer season, allow yourself to really feel all the feels and release, allow those emotions to move through your body and be transmuted, because that also is a block when we suppress our emotions and we deny ourselves the ability to feel and let them pass through us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Flow.
Yeah, beautiful.
Speaking of flow, I think we have a going out song.
All right. I'm gonna hit it, okay?
Let's go.
You're joking.
No, we're
I don't do this, but go ahead on, break them off with a little preview. I'm not trying to be rude, but hey, pretty girl, I'm feeling you. The way you do the things you do reminds me of my Lexus cool. That's why I'm hoping you grill, trying to get you to you must be a ball coach. The way you got me playing the field, so baby, give me that. Let me give you that.
Corey. Oh my God.
Bouncing.
Happy full moon, everyone.
Happy full moon.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Bitcoin Zodiac podcast. We hope that our discussions about cryptocurrency, trading, the phases of the moon, and spirituality have inspired you to explore these topics further. As always, DYOR, do your own research. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we will continue to dive deeper and build off of these perception-expanding topics. Remember, whatever your beliefs may be, we all have something to learn from each other. So stay curious, stay open-minded, and keep exploring the world of Bitcoin and astrology. Until next time, these are your hosts signing off. May the stars align in your favor and your Bitcoin investments prosper. Peace and love and Bitcoin. Namaste.